You think?
We're on.
Hey!
The little black will come up. There it is.
The miracle worker Mike Cornwell, who was described in a newspaper as Cromwell, and I tried to explain that it's not Cromwell, it's Cornwell. Did you notice that?
You talking about for the church thing?
Was it the church thing or the newspaper thing?
What newspaper thing?
No, it was a newspaper. They did a special on you guys playing instruments and stuff. Did you see that?
That must have been the church.
Oh, maybe, but yeah, Mike and Christina Cromwell. I went, whoa, by time out, it's Cornwell, but they didn't want to. Anyway, this is the man.
I am a man. I don't know about the man. Maybe the man in this room.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm trying. That's what I'm trying to give homage to. Okay, hey, we're on a topic already.
Yeah.
You know what?
We were talking about a bunch of miscellaneous topics.
You woke me up. The last time you mentioned something when we talked about leadership, and we started on this leadership thing.
Yeah.
I think we should get back to which you said also.
Yes.
And I agree, because leadership is a very peculiar thing in a lot of ways, because it makes all the difference in the world for some people. And I'm just going to jump right into it. I don't believe that people like leadership in general. Their nature is not. And yet, Israel clamored and clamored and clamored for a king, and God said, no, I'll be your king. Oh, no, we got to have that person be the king, because it was their pride talking. It wasn't their, they were flesh. But God was saying, no, you don't need a king, you need me. And they said, no. So he let them have a king. And so they really liked the head and shoulders man, which was Saul.
Yeah.
And they liked him. However, the reality was that he didn't turn out to be a good king, and he gave in to his own pride.
Is that true, though?
Yeah.
If you really think about it, though? See, here, time out. That's an assumption by looking back at the thing. But if you look at it instead, just before Saul is like Judges, and then you look at it and it goes, well, like you don't want a king. Because it looks like that. Would you not agree? Because here's what I'm saying. An idealized version of something takes away the reality of what the thing actually is. Because there's always, we'll call it trade-offs. In order to have the king, you get all this goodness, but then you lose this. Yeah. And one of those things is you're now under the rule of a man who is a man. In other words, they have all of the falls and all the pitfalls of all that kind of stuff. But you also get the benefits of being under one man.
But that's what God was trying to prevent them from.
Correct. So what I'm saying, I'm just poking a hole in the idea that somehow Saul was a flawed king. No, he was a king.
Well,
you see what I'm saying?
Well, he had a flaw in his character in that he compromised.
That's all kings, though. That's all kings.
That's all kings. That's correct. And that's why God said, you don't want a man king.
You don't want a king.
Because they're all man kings. They're all not God kings. God king's a different story.
God kings.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
A God king's a different story.
Sorry, I just had to catch that because people say these things. And because they'll say that about all sorts of things, like he's not a good president or he's not a whatever. And it's like, those things you're saying,
exactly.
He's actually an idealized, normal version of that.
I want to say something to you about that. That's very interesting. I was talking to God this morning, and he said to Joshua, what do you want done? And he said, take the sun and go 10 degrees. It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
And everybody went, like I've been in school when they were teaching on this, and said, he actually grabbed time as well as the sun and went like that. I said, and God said, now let me ask you a question. A squirrel came into your yard and then he took off. Did it make any difference to your life? No. So not everything is tied to everything. It just happened to happen. What if that squirrel did come in and went out of your life and nothing happened? I said, it did. It came in, it went out. Right. So it's not real. Everything is not connected to everything. I don't have to stop all of time in creation because we moved one thing or we touched one thing. So when I took the sun and went, that was nothing for me. And it didn't change anything. You guys didn't change. He just, wow, you're all wowed about the miracle. But that was just something I could do very simply. And we think, well, he actually caused a change of time and all the framework of universe. It's not that connected. It's hard to explain this thing, but what I'm saying is,
Yeah, I think I understand.
God can do things and may affect change to some things, but may have no change to anything else. And I think that's the same with us. There's certain things that can happen, and we say, "Oh, it really changed the nation. It changed us." Really? I mean, it's just part of the deal that was happening.
Yeah.
It's not like we make such a big deal about the event, and we need to wake up and say, that didn't.
When I look at I mean, to your point, when I look at these things, I normally have a different view. At this point, I kind of assume that there's some big galactic trajectory, so to say, that things are on. I don't want to call it fate. I'm just holding that personally, that I'm not going to call it fate. But I'll see that there's like a trend, and the trend will be going up. And then there's just a convenient event that happens that keeps that trend going. That's as far as I go with it. And from doing the mathematics of how these changes over time happen, one thing I will tell you is that they're always larger and more ridiculous down the road than they were in the beginning. So an example would be like the U.S. economy and stuff. In order to get growth at each stage, so at each interval being like for every year, the amount of numerical quantity that gets stacked on top to create that slant, because the growth, as no growth would be straight, growth would be going up from section to section. To get that next section, so you had this growth before, to get to that next top up here, this has to be bigger than this. That additional amount, that is the growth, that right there stands on the shoulders of all this other stuff that also has to be done in order to gain that. So in other words, you still work your job, I still work my job, but then something else happens to stack on top ever more. And so I think about this stuff all the time. And so then all of a sudden you'll have some ridiculous event that causes things to push ever higher. And they're getting more just totally wackadoo. They're just getting super crazy in order to egg out that next step. And at some point, they're not going to be able to do that. I know this is a completely different topic, but I look at those things because you're right. I would definitely say some events are not events. They're not actually real. But then when something is moving in a particular trajectory, there's things that happen as they come along.
Yeah, I think that's true. I mean, for what you're saying, but I mean, in leadership, if I can go back to that,
I was going to say, let's talk about leadership.
we can say that. In fact, we were on this topic, you and I, about the difficulty that man has with God. I'll tell you why. Because when the Spirit moves, the flesh is against it. The flesh is like, no, we're comfortable, we're fine, thank you very much. And the Spirit wants to move this way. No. See, I say, whatever God does, man doesn't like it. And it's not terrible for me to pray and be in prayer and go, God, Father, I don't like this, and I don't like what's going on, and I don't like what you're doing. And he'll go, oh, I already know that. God already knows that. That's a given. Flesh, spirit. God goes this way, man goes this way. It takes God to live for God. It takes God to do things that man can't do. That's what grace is. Grace is God doing stuff that man can't do. And so we don't want to hear that. We want to hear, tell me what we can do, and then God can say, oh, you did that. There's no boasting in the flesh. There's no boasting in our pride. You can kind of put it together with that too. That's why I'm talking about pride and flesh. Yeah. It's like we want to be thanked. And he's like, no, I'm doing this, and you thank me later, because you need me to save you. You need me to come in and make a difference. And that's what I did. I came in and made a difference. And one day you wake up to that, which I have, but some people to some degree or another, wake up to the fact that God moved and did something for us that we couldn't do. It's very hard against the flesh. The flesh doesn't like that. That's a slap in the face. You're almost useless. And even Jesus said the flesh is like grass. It comes up, fades away, and it's gone. We don't need the flesh. We need the Spirit of God to do stuff. And when he moves and does stuff, maybe we don't like it, but maybe that's the most changing thing that can happen to a church or to a group or to a leader. A leader has to say what God is saying, even if everybody don't. I believe me, I've done that in most of my churches, and they were upset about it. And then later they would say, "You were right. That's what the Spirit is doing." They got to be careful about judging us about that, because it gets to be a fight, the flesh and the spirit fighting. And so I'm aware of that, and a leader has to be aware of that to some degree. He can't be the friend of everybody, pat everybody on the back. Wonderful, we love you, thank you, very good, wonderful, thank you, wonderful. It's like the picture of the pastor. He's out by the door when they're leaving, saying this very word, nothing personal, nothing personal, nothing personal. And they're shaking the hand, nothing personal. I'm like, I'm standing back, oh, time out. You're supposed to be personal.
This is why we got to do this leadership podcast. John, they talk about all sorts of, we could get in the weeds on all sorts of stuff. But the reality is no one's having these like real discussions on it, because what you're saying is 100% right. The person who was doing that, they're doing administration. They're not doing leadership. They're doing people management, which is, what we need.
They can't see me.
What we need them to do is go there. They want to walk by. We want to keep them happy.
Put us both on here. Listen to this.
Yes, it's
administration.
It's administration of people,
or managing.
Because what a leader is doing, it's complex and it changes all the time. Because at one moment it's this and that's it. I always find that it's often what you're trying to be is this like counterbalance. Someone is really excited, you might want to try to bring them down, walk them down a little bit. Or, they're really low, like you're talking about a person earlier who's not giving a fiery speech. You need to like raise them up, because like you can see like you're not in the right state here. So let me try to lead you into that right state. That implies right out of the gate that you can't just do the problem with doing what you said a second ago is you run the risk of becoming an NPC background character that is irrelevant in their life. And that is literally the dead opposite of what leadership actually is. You actually become critically important in their life. And that's not to say that the whole thing is about like you're attempting to do that. But if you're like actually making a change and you actually matter and you're actually doing something, then you by definition have to matter. That's why leadership actually does matter.
That's why I say leaders have got to do what God says to do and hear what God is saying, because maybe the whole church didn't like it. No, pastor, we don't like that. No, leader, we don't like that. No, we don't want that. No. But then later they go, after we went through all this crap, we realized that the pastor was right or the leader was right. We should have went with the leader. The leader was right. And I've heard this 1,000 times. And I'm like, of course you went against it, because when the Spirit of God moves, flesh, man, go against it. Nothing God does a man like. I didn't say love, I said like. They don't like it. Now, some men of God are at a point where they love God, and God did something, they go, you know what, I'm not going to say nothing because I better wake up now. Hang on now. They're a little more wiser than shooting their mouth off. This is terrible. That's basically what I'm talking about. When I talked about the guy that needed fire, I was talking about a guy who was not only boring, but you could barely hear him, monotone voice. Nobody was inspired, and nobody did anything. He said all nice, good stuff, but nobody did a thing. And I said, if you got a little fire, maybe they would, react.
I'll tell you, I know exactly what speech you're talking about, and it was from content. It was fantastic. The content was fantastic.
The content was great.
Yeah.
But the fire was gone.
The fire was not there.
There was no fire. He was home, but no lights were on. I don't know how you say it, but I want to tell you a little joke. Very important joke. Okay. You got it on both of us? It's important because it talks about what we're talking about. So the pastor says, I had a dream last night. No, the speaker comes to speak at the church and he goes, I had a dream last night. Oh, what did you dream? He says, well, the pastor was there and so was the assistant pastor. We were there at the river, and we had to get across the river. And Peter came on the other side of the river and said, don't worry. To the degree that you have sin in your life, you will sink. But only to the degree that you have sin in your life. If you got half sin in your life, you'll come up to here. But, don't worry about it. You'll get to the other side. But it has to do with how much sin you got in your life. So I took off, and I started going into into the water. And man, I started sinking right away, and the water was coming up. And I looked over, and there's the pastor walking on water. And I went, "Hey, wait a minute! I know you got more sin in your life than that." And he said, "Shh, I'm on the associate pastor's shoulders."
Nice. Nice.
And I told that joke wherever I spoke, right? It didn't fly too good, but it got the point across that, we ride on things just to save ourselves. It's not going to work. You're going to get wet. You're going to go in. And anyway, there is a scripture about this coming into the world. God is calling there with, I think it was Elijah at the time of Elijah, and he said, just keep coming and come in farther than just your waist or your boots. Come in farther. And there was a call to come into faith and take that step into faith, and it was pretty heavy. But anyway, I digress there. Leaders are not supposed to be raw.
Can I pause that for like 2 seconds? You just said something that was actually really, really noteworthy. I don't know. I don't think I actually ever thought about this, especially when I was putting my book together. The role of faith in leadership is actually
100%.
pretty high, actually.
Otherwise, it's a waste of time.
So, and the thing I'm tying together is, okay, you've got that, that's important, but then when you combine it with, like, I'm a massive proponent of the lead by example. I can't say that I lead by example as much as I would like, but I've just seen it enough. The monkey see, monkey do thing. Like actually at church this last Sunday, fantastic. I saw the choir director totally turn the corner in capabilities of getting the kids to respond by, she kept wanting to, like, I knew it was just from intuition, it was never going to work. She kept wanting to, like, go to the piano and, like, play the piano, but that's, like, to the side of the kids. They're looking out there, and it's like, no, you have to play the person who's, like, directing things, And eventually, like, at one point in one of the songs, what the kids wanted to do is they wanted to do, like, they wanted to kind of clap to the beat. It's actually clapping to the offbeat, which is kind of important here. Clapping to the offbeat on this one particular part. And so they wanted to do that. And I had seen all the practices. They were terrible. They're freaking terrible. And the reason is they were the kind of the main pupils who generally follow her. They were the ones leading the clapping. Now, they're motivated to do the clapping. That's why they did it. And obviously people want to do the clapping. But clapping on an offbeat is actually pretty difficult for most people. That is not a normal beat that you want to hit. And throughout the practice, it did not go very well. And so they said they were still going to do it. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I think she finally kind of gave up. And what she did was she did the clapping and led the clapping.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
Yep.
There were multiple times during that where I know from the past experiences of watching her that she was trying to get them to do the thing. And instead, she just did the thing in front of them. And then they followed along with her. And it's like, well, there it is. Right there. That's the way to actually do it. Because it's not by doing the things, by saying it. So that's a big soliloquy on leading by example. Because people have a freaking hard time without, like they need to literally follow what you're doing.
Yeah.
So when you combine the two together, I want to talk about faith and the importance in leadership. You are playing in the game of they have to have faith in you and the plan and where you're going. The whole thing is dependent upon that because you're trying to get them to move on that. But the first thing you have to do is have faith in the plan to go along, even of yourself to go take those steps.
Like I said, every move in leadership has to have faith or it's a waste of time.
You're totally right.
But here's an interesting point that I took a picture of this when she started doing the actions of when Jesus was laying asleep in the bed.
Yes.
Remember she did that?
Yep.
She did that. So did everybody around her.
Well,
and I was watching it, so I took a picture and I went, you see, everybody knows what's expected and they want their kids to do it. So they're all helping the leader. And I thought that was very interesting.
That was actually a perfect example.
It's perfect.
They saw, to the credit of the women here that deal with these kids all the time, they saw the struggle instantaneously. It was within like 10 seconds of that song starting.
Or 2 seconds.
Yes, they instantaneously, because my wife left her seat to go over there to join that chorus.
I saw it, yeah.
To get them to go do this thing. And then by doing it, they saved the entire kid thing.
Yeah.
100%. I just love the fact that you took a picture of them and not the kids.
No, I took a picture of them because I saw what was going on.
Yes, that was a big deal.
Of course, everybody thinks I'm an idiot, but that's okay.
Now, what I'd like you to do is after this, I want you to show my wife that so I can then be like, see?
There it is, blown up.
Yeah, they're going to do what you do.
So leadership and faith are a couple of very interesting things, okay? When, what's his name at the Indiana Jones Lost Ark, and he had to get to the chalice, and they came to this invisible chasm, and they couldn't get across, and it said, you got to go in faith. And he went, go in faith, what does that mean? And he said, oh, okay. So he put his foot out to step into the chasm and fall to his death. But when he did it, he found there was a path there.
Yeah, a hidden path.
A hidden path. Not to the sight, but by faith. By faith, the just shall live by faith. And so we have to have this element of trust to say, okay, I'll take it, but if it don't work, I'm out of here, and it works. And we go, and we're surprised because faith is required. It's not perfection. It's not you are so obedient that you do whatever I say. It doesn't. That don't count because when I bring you to the chasm, you're not going to go across there unless I do. Mm. And you notice he took the stones and he threw the stones on there, and you could see where the stone, so you could see where the path is. Then the people went because they could see with their sight.
Yeah, they would never have gone across without that.
They would no.
So what you're saying, he really made the mistake of that because then the bad guys went in there to go get it, and they kind of wrecked the whole thing.
And that was a problem. Had they not done that and stayed in faith, they would not have been able to follow.
That's fact.
How about that? So in leadership, I see it as an act of faith. And Lord, you sure you want me to do that? Okay. And you do it, and they go, no, that's hell. You're crazy. No, but you can come, but you get to come by faith. And then they take the step, there is something there, and they can walk across. That is extremely good lesson about faith walking with the leader. Mm. And you don't want to mark it with stones and with flesh because it allows the enemy to come, because the enemy has no faith. I know people think he does, but no, he has no faith. He's just an enemy. He's just a hindrance. That's all he is. He's a hindrance.
Pride has no faith.
No.
Pride doesn't have faith.
It has no faith. It has to know something. It has to be perfect. It has to be good enough. Another lie. It has to be good enough. And I've been saying this for years. If you want to be good enough, you can't waste your time trying to be good enough. This is what people have very difficult time with, especially in churches. I tell you, the churches I visited, I asked the people, so are you going to heaven? Oh, yeah, we believe we're going to heaven. Okay. How do you get there? Well, you do this and you do that. You mean you got to be good, right? Oh, you got to be good. And then some people will say, well, I hope I'm going. Well, I hope I'm good enough. And you realize that the basis is on performance and being good enough. And I'm saying, no, that's not what grace is. Grace does what man cannot do.
It's so funny. I believe, I don't know the full origins of your, I guess you call it, fortitude in these, I'll call it a concept. I'll speak how,
I like that.
I'll speak how I can speak, whether somebody can follow me or not. So you got kind of this fortitude in these. I don't really know where the origin is, but I do believe that you've teased this out enough to understand what the concept is. And if they're claiming to follow the concept, but then you're showing that they don't have any clue what the concept is. Because I definitely know what you're talking about, because I will say the same thing to people in different contexts. Like, here's one that's super funny. I've noticed that people in society, maybe because they're around me, that I don't know if it's about me or it's society. I think it's a society thing. I don't think it's a me thing. But I'm fine to take the blame either way. But I've noticed that people try to use this like fake technical language all the time. They will say certain kinds of things that appear like if you were to stop and look at it long enough, pull it out and tease it out, you're like, well, this comes from like a technical person speaking or like kind of like a science-based type thing. And I've come to believe that a lot of society has like, they're catering to that viewpoint. So they've adopted these verbiologies to have this kind of stuff. And so one of them, it came up a Bible study last week. A person there, a not technical person, was saying how they really don't like that people will say, actually, like, you're in a conversation and somebody will be like, well, actually. It's this way. So the funny thing about it, so that triggered me because I will say that all the time. But I was like, okay, well, what's the difference? I'm like, I know what he's talking about. He's actually bringing up a better and bigger point, which was just along the lines of, it's not, anyway.
Be more exacting, yeah.
Well, I would say more, kind of more prideful. But where that comes from, like, okay, so where does that terminology come from? It's like, well, that's coming from the spaces where actually it needs to be a certain kind of way. Because I've run in this a lot of times, and this is where I will friction with people. Well, they'll say something, and they're trying to be fast and loose. They kind of maybe understand the concept, but they don't really understand the core thing. And without understanding the core thing, you don't know the plurality of it. And so, which is like a concept, but it's actually almost more definitive than a concept. So anyways, I've had to many times in my life say like, actually, it's this. For most people, they don't like that because they didn't care about the technicals to begin with. But if you did care about it, you actually need to know them.
Okay, well, I have something to say about that because actually,
yes,
leaders have got to be alone to some degree in order to hear and know what to do. They have to have aloneness because if they're just in the bubble, in the mixture, in the recipe, or in the what do you call it, the pancake matter, they have to come up out of the matter and come over here on a spoon and be alone for a while, but say, hey, you know what? You all guys are in a pool of batter, but we need to do this in order to add flavor. We need to add vanilla. We need to do something. A leader has to come out of somewhere to be alone a while. And that is why, my friend, that is why you and the path that you've taken has allowed you to be a leader. That God has walked you through this path that you've been through in order to be a leader, because a leader is not one of the crowd in the batter, in the soup. Better word, maybe, in the soup. Yes, you're in the soup. It's great. You're in the soup. We thank you. But somebody's got to walk out of that soup and be alone and then see. It's like somebody told me, you never let grass grow under your feet. I go, what do you mean by that? He says, it's kind of like the guy that says the grass is greener on the other side, but you don't just settle for the grass is fine here. You say, no. This is the way we go to get the greener grass. He said, that is a leader. That's what takes a leader. A leader has to have faith to lead that too. He can't just say, the grass is greener over there. The grass is greener over there. No one's going to go. But if he goes in faith, they will go. They will go. And so that's how I see it. A leader has to move in faith in some way. And even though you can't break it down in knowledge, you know what I mean? You can't just break it down in certain knowledge.
Yeah. Because
faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. That's what its faith is. But you can't sit there and go, let me see, I got the evidence of the thing not seen. No. You don't. It's not thinking it through. It's taking that step. It's taking that step. Whether they follow or not, they usually do, because that's what leaders are. Leaders will go and then the rest will follow. But it takes some guy to be somewhat alone to be a leader. And by the way, that poor guy's going to pay, because leaders find that they are persecuted, they're hated, they are this, they are that. As Jesus said, I'm going to make you fishers of men. I'm going to make you all leaders. You'll all be priests, a royal priesthood. And the rest of the world will say, we don't like that. We don't like you. We don't like them. And he says, yeah, you're like sheep led to the slaughter. You're going to pay for leadership, but I'm making you a leader. And that's where Jesus was a wonderful leader. because it was all hear from God and do it. It was,
Well, they say he's the most perfect example.
yeah, but it's kind of loses something when they say that.
I agree.
To me, it's like, yeah, but that's not quite really what he is. He was a little bit more than that. He was actually the Son of God.
I wanted to comment on that. The one thing I would say though, that if you take certain thing, as with all these things, if you take it too far in a particular direction, we'll call it being alone, taking that too far, you end up not being able to become a leader, because you have to come back from that to actually go and affect change.
Yeah.
and not only that, I would say maybe another thing, I don't know if it's in entirety, but another characteristic of that going away is you have to be attempting to find the bigger picture. And I would also say for the group and not just yourself.
Absolutely.
And a lot of people, especially who are in the introverted type, and I consider myself more introverted than people think. I just had a whole house full of people who were quasi-introverted or extroverted and introverted. And I mostly just hung back. Because when there's a lot of normal people around, I am not trying to get in there and where there's no real purpose, so to say, and recreational type things. I'm more like maybe trying to listen to what's going on or seeing the dynamics or something, or spending the time thinking and considering of different kinds of things, of how these pieces all fit together. But I've seen other types that are like introverted, and they are not going to their seclusive space to come back out as like the person who's going to bring people along.
Well, that's the definition of a recluse. He goes to his own space, but he never comes out.
Oh yeah, I guess it's true. Yeah.
And that's not good. I got a brother that does that. He's into his own little space, but he don't come out. He has more gifts than I ever thought of having. He has voice. He has instruments. He has intelligence. He has everything, but he doesn't come out. He just stays in this little space, and that's a shame. It's a sad situation.
I'm definitely certainly in this place. I consider myself to be a pretty creative person who likes to build all sorts of different stuff. Acquire skills. So I can play violin, I can fly an airplane. Yada yada. I can fix computers, whatever. But I've definitely come to this space where I do wonder. We'll call it being a little bit more humble and like pausing things. So we've talked about community and community building like quite a bit, which I don't consider myself to be a good community builder by all. Normally if you're a community builder, you're in the idealist camp. Like you're in this abstract, like touchy-feely space. You're not in an engineering space. That's just not normally how it works. So if anything, I'm trying to engineer a community, if anything.
Yeah.
So, or maybe put some structure around it to try to help it flourish or whatever. But one of the things that I've come to wonder is like whether or not this concept of like an informal community or whatever, if that is superior to the naturally formed one that happens out there that exists. And I actually don't know the answer to that. I've finally come to the place now where I'm not entirely sure that's the case. And I can point to a lot of different things, but then again, these are like really vague concepts anyways, that what is a community,
Yeah, I find another thing that's very frustrating for me. What you just described to me is sometimes when you bisect something and dissect and dissect, pretty soon you kill it. Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes you just have to keep yourself from dissecting and bisecting. You got to back up.
Yeah.
I led him this way. I said we got to go this way. We're on our way there. We're in faith. Yeah, a little bit of back up here and a back up there and a weird person there and a weird this and stuff. Not all. Hey, God, it's not really working. Try not to bisect and dissect it, because it has its own life and has its own way.
Own life.
Have its own way. You know what I mean?
An example of this would be like, you can clearly see pros and cons. So like a closer knit community, people feel as though they are actually connected to people, and I think that is like definitively obvious. Whereas this society that has developed, I would say in the last minimum 30 years, you'll live in a suburban household and know none of your neighbors. And that like really impacts people where they feel like, you look at like the loneliness crisis where people feel so alone. Yet they're like ever more jammed and, packed together and have so much in common technically with other people,
Yeah.
failing to realize that. But then on the flip side, you look at things like one's ability to procure resources or build organizations and all that, and it can be very challenging with a naturally formed kind of local community.
There is no greater challenge than leadership. There is none. There is none.
It would appear to me, but that's the case.
As far as I'm concerned, there's no greater challenge because you're tested in every. You go through a strainer, a ringer, a colander, or whatever you want to call it. You go through that in all kinds of different ups and downs, and good enough, bad enough, morals, motives, and all that stuff. And pretty soon you're just dripping out of that colander barely enough, and then God says, "Tell them to do this. Now that I got you here, tell them to do this." And we go, "This is not the best time to be a leader." Just do what I say. And you do it, and it works, and things happen, and you go, "That was so challenging, God. I don't really want to do that anymore." Because you have to be honest about it.
Yeah.
You have to be honest, because really, if you're not honest, you're really missing something very, very valuable, and that is that it wasn't about you. It was just about you being a certain place, a certain time, humble and real, and you said something, and boom, it has a lot more strength to it. That's why it says in the Bible, "My strength is made perfect in your weakness." And next time we get together, I want to talk about weakness, because weakness in leadership is not as bad as people make it out to be.
I've come to take some cues from my wife, which is more in the moment and let the thing be, and certainly to get on what I'll do is I'll hop on the fringes and the edges and try to balance some of it. So I'll see some imbalances in how people, like, for example, perspectives that people have on other people. And I try to be a little bit, as much as I can, and I feel like I do not do a very good job of it, but I'm very cognizant of trying to, like, they're moving in this direction away and out of the group and be like, well, normally because some person. Like, well, let's create some understanding here.
Yeah.
Let's create some tools for you to be able to, like, deal with the fact that this person is very much not like you. Because, the group here is like all of the personality temperaments are very well covered.
Yeah.
Like, it's a good...
Which is challenging
It
anyway.
is wildly challenging because people, what they'll end up doing is they'll take their own personality temperament and they'll use it as a metric that they view the other person. So they'll put it over the top of them, and they're like that because they're trying to interpret from their lens, and they look at it and they go, they must be like that. So for me, I will look at people as planning, calculative, intentive, like they have intent with what they're doing.
Yeah, I guess what you're saying.
You see what I'm saying? So that's what I will actually apply to them all the time. And it's like, well, no, sometimes they're just freaking idiots. and that just is what it is. And it's like, no, they don't think. They just panic and they just make emotional decisions about stuff. And it's like, really? That's what they're doing? And of course, if you say it and you're just sitting there for somebody like me, it's like, oh, I guess that is what they're doing. But they'll ascribe, for example, to me, evil motives.
Yeah.
And because the actions that I'm doing are outside of the alignment of the kinds of actions that they would
Maybe
do.
the person will hit you with stuff that really they're dealing with and that they really are like.
Yeah, that's a whole nother, yes.
Like what happened to me when we talked
Yeah,
about
yeah.
those, and then suddenly you go, wait a minute, that's not me, that's you.
Yes. And,
Anyway, next time we got to talk about a little place where you can pay. What's that called? Money thing?
Patreon?
A Patreon. Yeah, we have a Patreon, right?
We do have a Patreon. It probably needs to be repurposed, yeah.
And secondly, we're on YouTube, which is important. So some of my friends watch this whole thing because we're on something very powerful, and next time is going to be even more powerful. I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
I'm liking where things are going.
I gotta go. I gotta take off pretty soon here anyway. But
Yeah. I'm
thank
sure I
you.
do.
Thank you for this, Mike.
You're welcome, John. Till next week, we'll see y'all.
Yep, we'll be there.